Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Oh, okay, so here is a beautiful photo. Is that your dog?
That's my dog, one of my two dogs.
Okay.
That's a Ripley.
Ripley, good name. Seated on a bed, I would say.
Yep.
Not the sofa, seated on the bed. Between, or in front of his legs in the foreground is the book. Birth is the Coward's Way In. Talk to me. Is it about dogs or is it about book? Like why?
I just figured sending you too many pictures of just books would be boring eventually, so I've got my dog in the picture.
Okay. Why Ripley?
Why the name Ripley?
Yeah.
Well, it's after Sigourney Weaver in Alien.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah. So she was a female Mongol, and like she had kind of a standoffish attitude when we first got her. Like,
Okay.
I don't need you guys.
Yeah.
And she got ready to adopt her.
Awesome.
She was eating our food. She's like, I could survive in the wild. And she had survived in the wild. So we needed like a strong female lead.
awesome.
And in a lot of ways, Sigourney Weaver was like the first in that attacked. So yeah,
That's
it was
great.
a good fit. So
That's
she became
great.
Ripley.
Okay.
And yeah, she's a good little dog. She's still a little weird, little stand-up. No,
Yeah,
she's gotten better, but
Nice.
she's got personality. That's for
Nice. So I think because of my training in poetics and art and everything, I do see everything as a symbol, right? And that even if you're just like, even if you randomly, in your head, randomly pick 4 photos, and you thought, I don't know, whatever, we'll just talk about this. The fact that that's photo number 3, the photo of Ripley with your book in front, is part of your narrative, right? And is symbolic, and there is like deep connection within that. So what's good for me is I get to learn what exactly created that moment that you would want to use that to talk about it.
I don't think it's as deep as you're gonna want it to
No,
be,
it's not
but-
one. It just, I'm sure it is though.
So when the book first arrived, boxes from Amazon, and I realized now also the last image is going to be a poster for the book launch that's now already happened. So
That's great.
that'll be fine. So it arrives, and I'm hoping to get people to go to my book launch.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to promote it on social media and whatnot. And I have cute dogs, and people like dogs more than
Right.
they like book launches.
Yep.
So I take a picture of my dog with the book,
Yeah.
and I post that instead.
Nice.
It's purely a contrived mechanism to trick people into going to a book launch.
I was talking about the power of poetry, the power of writing, and the idea that when you're writing, in a way, so you know what mirror neurons are?
Yes, it's the idea that you'll have the same neurological pathway fire as someone you see based on your interpretation of their emotions. So if they're in pain, you will have a similar firing and can almost feel pain.
As if you, yeah. That's where kind of the idea being is maybe that's where empathy comes from.
Yeah.
So in a way, the task of the writer, knowing, like if we apply this idea of motor neurons, the task of the writer is to put together words that somehow fires empathically in a reader to kind of feel something or experience something.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think that's very the case in slam, an American style sort of spoken word,
Right.
where it is very, emotions are often the main character.
Okay.
In that I don't write as much that style. I mean, I have a few that try and sort of get at understanding and playing out emotion, but maybe not necessarily triggering it in other people. But I often play more with or rely more on the way that humor works than the way empathy works, which I think kind of the current understanding of how humor functions is it's setting up an expectation so that your neurological pathways are ready to fire, and then doing something unexpected or that subverts those expectations so that the confusion creates this effect we call humor.
I am so happy you said that. Okay, so I went to your book launch, and that was great. And then the next evening was another event, and it was more about the beat poets.
Yep. Yeah.
And I hear that somebody read Howl from Allen Ginsberg. I'm just going to line up all these things.
Absolutely.
Okay. Allen Ginsberg.
So three poets got together,
Yep.
split it up, and read almost not quite the whole thing because
Yeah.
it is a long
Yep.
poem. But yeah, more.
So I saw Allen Ginsberg in Montreal at the university I was going to very soon before he died.
oh yeah.
And one of the things that he talked about that formed his aesthetics or formed his, his choices, and that what he thinks is important in art is he uses it by illustration with the words Nazi milk, right? So take the word Nazi, take the word milk, Nazi milk.
Yeah.
Two ideas that don't make sense together, and what that does, it's kind of like the comedic thing that you're saying, is it misfires. Like the listener goes, what? There's that weird sort of tension or gap that in humor makes a person laugh, right?
That's also, I think, the thing that causes the struggle that most poets have when they're starting out or when you're young and trying to write, is that because you write in this very forced rhyme, as people get with your poem, it's going to go exactly where they think it goes.
Yep.
Because they're already expecting the next line. So you've taken out any element of like confusion or surprise or flipping meanings on their head.
Yep.
And that's why it ends up a little bit boring.
Okay.
But everyone has to go through that phase.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's always interesting to see the people who they'll come and they'll read a poem of rhyming couplets about a breakup. It just seems to be the way to initiate yourself. And then like after a year of coming to poetry, they'll be reading something like totally whacked out and different that's just super interesting.
Yeah.
Love seeing that kind of development.
Oh, nice. So in terms of your writing, in terms of your evolution, right? So it's interesting that you're helping people in this very public sort of space deliver their poetry. But it's like to write a poem is a very private experience within your own little head. Hey there, buddy.
It's a cute little bird.
You're beautiful. I love these doves. They're so pretty.
There's a bird here with a speckled neck.
Yeah, it's a dove. It's so beautiful.
It's a dove?
Yep. I think it's an Asian dove or something. Yeah, so in terms of like the writing moment is you sit in a room and you come to terms, or you kind of come to within your own self in terms of what motivation you're on, right? And you try to put the words, or you kind of go with the feeling and you compile the words. And that's a different experience or a different process than doing an open mic where you're reading, which is more of a performance.
Yeah, I think it's also like the open mic for people that go there regularly and they write regularly serves as like a filter for your bad writing. You'll read, like, everyone has a moment where they read a poem and halfway through reading it on the mic they realize it's crap.
They're like bombing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh shit.
And it's not because their performance is crap, it's because when they read it in their own head, they couldn't actually see that it wasn't saying what they wanted to say, or it wasn't, and then they go and edit it. And if that piece had never visited an open mic, it would have stayed as what it was. And then you also have the moment where the first time you really get an over-the-top response, and you're like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Like that feeling is such a high.
Let's just wait for the helicopter to pass.
You're really quite a lot of helicopters.
Yeah, we're in Hong Kong.
Look, it's the same guy.
Just go back and forth. It's just like an audio bomb.
Showing it off.
So as you were saying before, rudely interrupted.
So you go on the mic, and then that moment when you get a response that is more than just a normal clap, or is like people out loud laughing, or like an intake of breath, or like that is when like sort of you know that you've written something that really is good and interesting. It has some value if things have value. But I don't know if at the launch, do you remember Akin performing?
Yeah.
So that piece, granted, I really like it. I put it at the front of the book, like it's the opening piece. But he definitely read it better than I've ever read it. Okay. And right as he hit that last line, there was this audible intake of breath from the whole audience. And I was like, that was, I'm still riding that high a little bit.
Nice.
And so actually I went up and I read a poem rather than bring the next speaker on immediately, because it was like a bit of a tough act to follow.
Right.
And then if you noticed, the next speaker got up and was like, I was happy I didn't have to follow Atkins.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's also great that it's like a piece of music that somebody comes in and lends their own, not interpretation, but their own sort of magic or energy to it that helps.
Yeah. In an early draft of the third book, I had like one of the best examples of just how utterly subjective this is. I gave the draft of the book to two people, one of whom my interaction with is that he used to run a short story night. He reads a bunch of short stories, writes a bunch of short stories, and so the flash fiction in there, he could take a look at. They both looked at the whole book. And the other one, who is a poet in Hong Kong, and he's very good with rhyme and meter, but he's also he's very honest and critical.
Yeah.
So, I basically went and found my harshest critic.
Right.
On both sides. And the short story expert comes back to me and says, I'm not sure I like the short stories, but the poetry blew me away.
Right.
And the poetry expert comes back to me and says, we should work a lot on the poetry. It's not there, but the short stories were incredible.
Yeah.
And I just laughed.
Yeah.
It was I wonder if that comes a little bit from them. It's easier to critique the art you know a lot about, because you're just I would just change this little thing.
Yeah.
You're just that brush stroke.
Sure.
But then if you're not a painter, you're that's just cool.
Yeah, you can just sort of take it for what it is.
Take it for what it is, yeah.
Okay.
It's like seeing how the sausage is made,
Right.
I still eat sausage though.
Oh,
so,
okay.
But it ruins it. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that is a perfect segue to the next last image, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.